Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Belgium's king expresses regret for the violence of his country's colonial rule over DR Congo as the African nation marks its 60th anniversary of independence. Meanwhile, in Belgium, a bust of King Leopold II in Ghent is removed in acknowledgement of the historical cruelty suffered by the people of Belgian Congo. Also, we hear from some of the young people in Belgium with Congolese roots who, though they have never set foot in DR Congo, say that they're still deeply invested in removing European memorials celebrating the oppression of the country. And we head to Chad to speak to some of those worried for both their health and their livelihoods as the country tries to navigate the economic effects of the coronavirus pandemic and the shortfall in medical equipment needed to treat the sick. But first, DR Congo marked 60 years of independence from Belgian colonial rule on Tuesday. The king of the former colonial power expressed regret for the atrocities carried out in the Belgian Congo at the end of the 19th century. Although King Philippe stopped short of issuing a formal apology, in Ghent, in Belgium, a bust of King Leopold II was removed in acknowledgement of the cruelty suffered by Congolese under Belgian rule. Nicolas Chemin takes a look back at the dark chapter in DRC's history.
After having been colonized by the Belgians for 75 years, the Democratic Republic of Congo became independent on the 30th of June 1960 at 11 a.m. In 1885, this vast territory had become Belgian King Leopold II's private property. It's only in 1908 that it was formally a Belgian colony. In Kinshasa on Independence Day in 1960, Belgian King Baudouin I praised the work of the colonizers. Soon afterwards, the Congolese Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba responded, and he did not mince his words. He declared, "We were mocked, insulted and beaten morning, noon and night. Our wounds are still too fresh for us to drive them from our memory." For decades, the Belgians exploited Congolese workers in mines and in the rubber industry. They did so in such a cruel manner that historians say the total population fell from 20 million people in 1885 to just 10 million in 1908. Belgium says it gave Congo its independence, but in fact there had been several revolts in the years leading up to 1960. The Belgian authorities never attempted to form a Congolese elite. This meant that in 1960 very few people knew how to manage the nation's administrations. On the 5th of July, riots broke out and 2 provinces seceded. Patrice Lumumba was arrested in December and executed in January 1961. He was considered too close to the Soviet Empire, and many historians believe the CIA and Belgium were involved in his assassination. Many Congolese today believe that the country's independence was rushed and was badly prepared by the Belgians. These fragile foundations have hampered the construction of a strong, democratic and efficient state. 60 years later, Congo has huge amounts of minerals and natural resources, but most of its people still live in great poverty.
Well, the push to decolonize public spaces in Belgium has in part been driven by young people of Congolese descent living in the country. A generation of activists who, though they have never set foot in DR Congo, still say that they're deeply invested in honouring the reality of what their forebears suffered under Belgian rule. Our correspondents report.
In her small bedroom in the Belgian city of Liège, Selemani installs her makeshift studio. This young nursing student is passionate about her videos, in which she talks about the country her parents came from, the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Avant d'aller dans le contexte congolais, j'ai d'abord fait quelques recherches par rapport.
She dreams of one day visiting the land of her ancestors. For the past few years, she's proudly talked about her roots. Between her 2 first names, she now prefers to use that of African origin.
For a big part of my life, Selemani was the name not to say. As soon as I was called Selemani, I had tears in my eyes because I was ashamed. Now I like it, so I use it gladly.
100% Liégeois, 100% Congolese. This is how Selemani likes to describe herself. However, she finds it difficult to keep this mindset when she sees the many colonial reminders present in Belgium.
We are told that we are Belgian, but now we see this, and we have the impression that we have to choose between being Belgian or being Congolese. It's very difficult to create an identity.
This is part of a lively debate in Belgium at a time when certain colonial statues have been defaced.
These statues are so confrontational, they give us no choice but to position ourselves against them. And this position is totally affirmed.
For the 60th anniversary of the independence of the DRC, Selemani hosted a podcast with other young people.
I don't want to transfer my pain. I want to make it better by speaking, by making podcasts. And above all, it's a kind of therapy for us young people of the Congolese diaspora.
These discussions touch upon a common desire for these young people, a return to their roots.
I'm looking for African, Congolese authenticity. I thought I was alone, so it made me super happy to find young people who are going through the same process as I am.
Most of them have never set foot on the African continent, but all aspire to fully embrace their ancestry.
At least 4 people were killed in Ethiopia as protests erupted on Tuesday following the death of a popular Oromo singer on the evening before. Hachalu Hundessa was shot in the capital on Monday night. He was seen as an important voice for the country's largest ethnic group, the Oromo, who have complained that they've been economically and politically marginalized. The internet was shut down from Tuesday morning and several people were reportedly injured in blasts in Addis Ababa. The violence highlights ethnic tensions that have continued under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. He took office in 2018, and though he was Ethiopia's first Oromo leader, some nationalists accuse him of not having done enough for the community since coming to power. And more protests demanding reform and justice for those killed in Sudan's 2019 uprising were held in Khartoum on Tuesday. At least one person was reportedly killed during the rallies. Called the Million Man March, they are the first major demonstrations since crowds took to the streets last year to pressure the military council to hand over power to civilian rule after the ouster of President Omar al-Bashir. The country is currently being jointly governed by the military and a civilian coalition in a 2-year transition towards elections, but many remain frustrated at the pace of change. Leaders from 5 Sahel countries met with France's president on Tuesday to review their collaboration against the spread of extremism in the region. The G5 Sahel summit was held in the Mauritanian capital of Nouakchott to discuss ramping up the fight against jihadist violence. Erin Ogunkei has more.
For his first trip abroad since the start of the coronavirus pandemic, Emmanuel Macron traveled to Mauritania to review the progress of the G5 Sahel coalition. Hailing what he described as a series of successes, the French president said the coalition now seeks to consolidate the gains of the past few months.
Nous sommes convaincus que la victoire est possible au Sahel et qu'elle est déterminante pour l'équilibre en Afrique et en Europe. Nous avons amélioré notre efficacité dans la lutte contre le terrorisme, mieux partager l'information, réussi le centre unique et de coordination à Niamey et eu des résultats spectaculaires, en particulier dans les dernières semaines.
At the last summit in Pau, France in January, the G5 vowed to combat the growing threat of the Islamic State group in the tri-border region spanning Burkina Faso, Niger and Mali. As a part of that goal, France deployed several hundred additional soldiers to the region, claiming to have neutralized hundreds of jihadists. And in early June, French special forces eliminated the head of al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, Abdelmalek Joukhtel. But the G5 Sahel still faces numerous uphill battles. Violence in the region is on the rise. According to the United Nations, jihadist attacks and intercommunal conflict killed at least 4,000 people in 2019, 5 times more than in 2016. And human rights organizations also accuse Burkinabe, Malian, and Nigerian soldiers of extrajudicial killings and forced disappearances, abuses the French president has vowed to investigate. And while thousands more soldiers are set to be deployed within the G5 Sahel, it is not yet fully operational because of insufficient funding and equipment.
Well, like so many other nations, Chad's economy has been hit hard by coronavirus. With 74 deaths from the illness, it's also struggling to overcome a severe shortage of medical equipment. The government slowly started lifting restrictions, but many are still worried for their health and their livelihoods. Our team reports from Jamina.
Jemena's main market is less busy than usual. Because of the coronavirus, the government imposed many restrictions, but many of them have now been lifted. The country has recorded more than 800 cases and more than 70 deaths. Street sellers are pessimistic.
Il n'y a personne qui vient. Tout le monde a peur de venir à cause de cette maladie.
The finance minister promised a €14 million recovery plan.
Pour compenser les 300 milliards que nous perdons, il faut rapidement mobiliser les 900 milliards que le président de la République lui-même a appelés, tant par la mobilisation de nos ressources propres que par le financement que nous devons mobiliser du côté des partenaires.
For weeks, all the shops that didn't sell food were ordered to close. Chad, which produces oil, has also been hit by the fall in oil prices. 2021 will be a difficult year, according to the country's businessmen.
2021, il va falloir être courageux, il va falloir doubler les efforts et il va falloir être surtout imaginatif pour sortir un peu des carcans sur lesquels on était habitué de travailler.
Next year, the government will also have to fund the presidential election. The constitution was changed in 2018, an amendment that means President Idriss Déby, who's been in power for 3 decades, can be a candidate once again.
And finally, we have put together a special show looking at the history behind the tumultuous relationship between Europe and Africa. Colonialism across Africa examines aspects of the painful legacy of colonialism. Join me for reports from France 24 correspondents in South Africa, Nigeria, Cameroon, and DR Congo, who explore the complicated collective memory of former colonial powers and the African nations they controlled. You can catch that, if you can, from Tuesday at 11:45 a.m. Paris time and Wednesday 5:45 p.m. Paris time, or you could always check it out online. That is, though, all we have time for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again if you can. Take care.